Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. We are breaking down the film Blazing Saddles, and we are looking at the credits, one prairie scene after the next. I'm Alan Sanders. I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And we continue today looking at the credits. We're going to get a bunch of featured actors that had maybe just a momentary bit or part on screen. And we're going to end with the production credit produced by Michael Hertzberg. And we'll actually see the camera move and start its pan across the landscape and show what looks like in the far distance a bunch of workers on a rail line. So we'll get at least a very extreme long shot of action happening way in the background.
Well, and that is the beginning of the insanity.
Oh, well, it began when you started listening to episode 0.
Well, this is true.
This is us.
The movie's insanity begins there. Our insanity goes way back.
Well, let's get to some of these names. I know I know yesterday was a marathon, but we had so many key actors and stories and things. So we'll try to go through these in a little more judicious manner. But there's some good credits here coming up, including the song, the music, featured actors, and we'll even discuss Panavision, which was big at this time.
That's right. And I know the first scene here, we have 7 different actors, and we're not going to go through all of these, but one in particular that stands out is, of course, Dom DeLuise. Mm-hmm. And he was in everything, I think, in the 70s and 80s.
Often paired up with Burt Reynolds, but also a lot of other movies.
That's right. And he was a very good buddy character, but he had 126 credits to his name.
A lot of television as well.
Yeah, a lot of television.
He was always sort of like the comic relief character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, one of the movies that stands out for us, for our podcast, is Haunted Honeymoon. He was in Haunted Honeymoon with Gene and with Gilda Radner. And interesting movie, not at the top of my favorites for Gene's movies, but a good movie, and Dom DeLuise plays a great part.
Yeah. I think, isn't that the last film that he and Gilda did together?
I believe it was.
Before she was too sick to go on and then eventually passed away.
Yeah. But other movies that he was in, Spaceballs, Cannonball Run with Burt Reynolds.
1 and 2.
1 and 2. He was also on Stargate SG-1. I'd forgotten about that. He played just a bit part on one of the episodes. He was in a movie called Silence of the Hams, which was a parody of Silence of the Lambs, which I had never heard of until I was going through his credits. He was in Robin Hood, Men in Tights. His character in Spaceballs was really interesting. It was very Dom DeLuise.
Very Dom DeLuise. Well, he had that solo movie that I think was an attempt to propel him as a solo star, Fatso.
Yes.
But it didn't really work.
It didn't.
The comedy seemed to miss. It's almost like he couldn't carry the comedy by himself.
Which is a shame. I don't know if it was bad writing or whatever, because I feel like he's a strong actor in and of himself. But I think he is strongest when he
actually has a cameo in Johnny Dangerously. He plays the Pope.
Right. That's right.
And I'm the Pope.
Yeah.
Oh, Your Holiness.
That's right. So he is a great comedy actor.
There's only 2 people who don't know you're Johnny Dangerously, and that's your mama and your brother, and we're going to keep it that way. I mean, here's the Pope advocating everyone lie.
That's right. That's right. So, but he, in everything that I remember him in, he's always good.
Yeah.
He's always solid.
Well, and he plays a fantastic spoof of your 30s, 40s style Hollywood director.
He does, and his character name is Buddy Bizarre, which fits perfectly for that.
They've
that
hit
time period.
Buddy.
Well, his part is so
come on, girls,
crazy in so many ways, because by that point we've broken down the 15th wall and we're spilling out all over the place. But you know, he does a song and dance routine, and He's just amazing.
Oh yeah, he's directing one of these lavish sort of song and dance movies of the 30s and 40s. He's got all these guys dressed in top hat and tails with the fountains in the water. It's all choreographed, and he's having them all dance the song "The French Mistake."
That's right. And he's got his director's pants.
He's got like the pantaloons on. They flare out. He's got the riding crop.
He's got a beret too, right?
And he uses a big. It's not
the megaphone.
It's like the old fashioned where it's just a tube. It's
right, like the cheerleader's megaphone,
right?
Kind of thing. Yeah,
like you're using a pylon that marks a cone in the street. That he's just speaking through it. It's like an old fashioned. It's almost like we've gone back to the 30s or something. The way he's directing.
Yes, it does feel that way. And for his scene set in the 70s,
right,
that even makes it more strange and funny and
right.
And
it's like. Well, I think that's the whole point. Everything's crashing in on itself. Time no longer matters. The date no longer matters. Sets, walls, formats, genres, locations.
It's all coming apart.
I mean, they even have tourists walking around part of the movie.
Yeah, right.
Including, we're going to get to this. I don't know if you knew this. One of the very last things we're going to see toward the very end of the movie, when everyone comes storming out of the movie lot, there's actually a guy who was looking for directions that got in the shot.
Yeah, and he's easy to pick out.
Yeah, once you know
exactly which guy he is.
Once you point to it, you'll never not see him.
Yes. You'll never have a problem figuring that out.
So the names on the screen we'll get into their characters as they come up, but Carol Arthur, she does a fantastic job reading the letter of disappointment by the citizens of Rock Ridge to the governor for the pick of the sheriff of Rock Ridge. Richard Collier, Charles McGregor, Don McGowan, Robin Hilton, who plays the beloved Miss Stein.
That's right.
She's out back walking the parapet.
Yes.
Or was that Lepetamaine walking the parapet?
Somebody's walking the parapet.
A pair of something.
Well, and we'll have some things to say about her. This was probably the high point of her career. And and then she is now kind of living a life of obscurity. So we'll have an interesting discussion about her later on.
And the last name we have on this list is Carl Lucas, one of the, again, featured or smaller players in the background. This next credit is actually, I think, one I want to spend some time on. Director of Photography, Joseph Barak, ASC. And when I looked up his credits, I was literally blown away with the number of movies he's worked on and the genres that he's been considered a guy to bring in as an expert cinematographer to work in.
Yeah, when you rolled through that, I was
One thing I read
surprised.
said very few people can actually say that they have done a film in just about every genre out there. He's done everything from It's a Wonderful Life to The Towering Inferno, which came out in the same year, to this movie, to movies like, let's see, I have on here, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, It's a Wonderful Life. He's done The Jerk, or The Jerk 2, which was the second version of The Jerk.
Yeah, which
he did The Longest Yard. He did stuff for television like Wonder Woman. He did Brian's Song. Some people consider one of the best sports movies of all time. Let's see. He did some Hardy Boys mysteries. So, I mean, he's done television, Man from U.N.C.L.E. episodes, which are spy type episodes, Toys in the Attic, Bye Bye Birdie, a musical. I mean, he's done just about every genre you can behind the camera. I think 75 years that he was involved in cinematic work.
That is really incredible. And that's a tough job, and particularly as that industry evolves over time, having to stay up on the technology and what kind of cameras and lighting is being used. That is really amazing. And to shoot an action adventure too, like The Towering Inferno, that is a lot of hard work. I mean, a lot of
balancing the stars involved in that one. That was one of those mega star movies. Everybody wanted to be in the big action adventure drama, and to deal with that.
So you remember seeing that movie, right?
Yeah.
Why has that movie not endured? Because I always liked that. I mean, I thought it was a great movie.
I don't know why some movies do and some movies don't. I cannot explain why something like that movie we don't ever talk about anymore. It never even enters our minds.
Nope. And then everybody who's our age, who you ever talk to, and you mention that movie, they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing The Towering Inferno. That was great."
Right. I mean, check this out. According to his bio, one of the most versatile cinematographers in Hollywood. He actually started as a lab assistant in 1918 out of Paragon Studios, located in America's first film capital, which was considered at that time Fort Lee, New Jersey. From there, he moved to the Paramount facility in Long Island as a camera assistant, and by 1927 found himself in Hollywood. He was under contract to RKO Pictures. He took on a number of jobs as second cameraman, frequently not even given the credit as second camera operator.
Wow.
Serving his apprenticeship under George Folsey, Barak, I guess that's how you say it. It's Joseph F. Barak. Became a full-fledged lighting cameraman in 1940, but World War II put his career on hold, as it did for many of Hollywood at that time. During the war years, he advanced to the rank of captain with the U.S. Army Signal Corps and was afforded the unique distinction of being the first American cameraman to film the liberation of Paris in 1944.
Wow.
So he worked with Joseph Walker as co-director of photography on the Christmas favorite, It's a Wonderful Life. Went on to films like Cry Danger, The Red Planet Mars, Buona Devil, and some other ones. Let's see, I'll pass over these, including Flight of the Phoenix, the original Flight of the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
So Towering Inferno, we already mentioned, just a host of movies. And I'll end with this one. For the remainder of the 70s, Barak did some of the best work for the small screen. He imbued a sense of realism, according to the nominations he's received for Emmys, to one of the best political miniseries ever filmed, Washington Behind Closed Doors, that came out in 1977, a fictionalization of Watergate and the Nixon administration. And in stark thematic contrast, he worked with Mel Brooks on the seminal comedy, as we're talking about here, Blazing Saddles, but also with Jim Abrams and David Zucker on the equally famous Airplane.
Wow. So he goes from the early days of cinema, where it's black and white, and you really are, you're having to handle lighting and photography, up through nearly modern movie making. Mm-hmm. He probably stops just before CGI.
He retired in 1986 and 2 years later was awarded the ASC Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
159 credits as cinematographer.
That could not be more well-deserved.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think that helps with a lot of the framing to keep that Western feel. He had a great eye for what you needed to capture for the story behind the camera.
That's an amazing career.
I'm blown away learning little things like this about these individuals. So,
and the talent that Mel Brooks consistently puts together for these movies.
And this guy wasn't young at this point in time. He was towards the back half of his career here.
Absolutely.
So he knew what he was doing.
Probably at the height of his career, really.
Well, they said a lot of his best work was recognized in the 70s for both the big and small screen. So next credit we've got here, which I wanted to get into as well, because we take widescreen for granted today. Mm-hmm. But remember, the advent of Panavision lenses and the Panavision camera revolutionized the movie theater and the movie experience.
From what I understand, Panavision allowed it to basically fill the big screen.
It's your true widescreen. The anamorphic projection lenses, that was the boom of the 50s. The Panavision kind of invented this technology in the 50s. Panavision expanded product lines to meet the demands of modern filmmakers. The company introduced its first product in 1954, originally a provider of CinemaScope. Remember, you'd see that credit, a CinemaScope film. Yep. Filmmaking with lightweight Panaflex 35mm cameras, the company introduced other groundbreaking cameras such as the Millennium XL. Actually has been still in the production, coming up with the digital video camera, the Genesis, in 2004. But we can thank them for giving us the ability to film those wide vistas, all those films of the mid-50s all the way through the 60s, Westerns and big, the Dr. Zhivagos, the Lawrence of Arabias, all these movies where you wanted this wide vista and that you couldn't capture it before the Panavision lenses.
A lot of the Westerns, same way, that you really want those big, broad shots to show the big, vast, open areas.
So not only do we get filmed in Panavision, we get the copyright 1974 when the movie was released. It was also another big thing at this time. It was filmed in Technicolor.
Impressive.
As opposed to, Young Frankenstein.
Right. Filmed in Techna black and white.
It wasn't just technically black and white. It was realistic. It was really
real
black and white. Technicolor is considered a series of color motion picture processes. The first version came out all the way in 1916, but really the major improvements followed one of the first films that gets the recognition of being totally in Technicolor, except for the very beginning, The Wizard of Oz, 1939, filmed in Technicolor. So that process is the trademark for a series of processes pioneered by the Technicolor Motion Picture Company, now a division of a company called Technicolor SA. The Technicolor Motion Picture Corporation was founded in Boston in 1914. So it's amazing how much of this technology before it moved out west was actually in the Northeast.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So they had a lot of patents on how to get deep, rich, vibrant color on film. So by the time, because a lot of times when you would film something and then you develop it and you splice it and then you put it on the screen, it would almost be a little dull or muted, but Technicolor would be something really bright and vibrant and capture the life of hopefully what the cameraman wanted, which in 1939 stunned audiences with the Wizard of Oz being able to go from the black and white grainy and all of a sudden when she's in Oz and it's just bam.
Yeah, it nearly blows you out of your seat.
Technicolor world.
Yeah.
It gets its own credit.
Technicolor, some of the early Technicolor, you'll notice it's almost too bright.
Right.
So
right. It's almost like the contrast is too high.
Yeah.
So you get credit for Technicolor, and it gets its own like full screen credit right there. And then we move on to a couple of other things. Next, we get production designer Peter Woolley and choreographer Alan Johnson. A lot of the fight choreography as well as dance. So there's some definite choreography.
Yeah, a lot of this film, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, we get a list of the 3 major songs that were written for this film, and we got to talk about them for a minute. The first one we're listening to right now, which is, of course, the title song. Sorry, there's only 3 here. There's one on the next screen. The title song is Blazing Saddles.
Right.
Written by Mel Brooks and John Morris. Music by John Morris, but sung by Frankie Lane.
Yes, and we talked a little bit about that earlier on. But
yesterday.
Yesterday. It all bleeds together already. But it is pretty amazing, just as we go through these, the incredible talent that Mel Brooks consistently puts together.
Right.
I mean, to get Frankie Lane...
Especially, again, he hadn't had the big super hit yet.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost like, hey, this is the up-and-coming guy. This is who you want to hook your wagon to.
Well, you talked about him just being a good singer and well-known. And I said this yesterday, he had 75 years in the industry, but he sang well-known theme songs for many Western soundtracks, including 3:10 to Yuma, not the remake, the old one.
Right.
Gunfight at the OK Corral, obviously Blazing Saddles. Although his recordings were not charted as a country and Western, Lane sang an eclectic variety of music styles. He actually has songs that he did in the pop genre, as well as gospel, rock, folk, jazz, and blues.
Amazing.
A very talented singer. I think the biggest thing to get from Frankie Lane is often billed at that time as America's #1 song stylist. His other nicknames included Mr. Rhythm, Old Leather Lungs, and Mr. Steel Tonsils. His hits included That's My Desire, That Lucky Old Son, Mule Train, Jezebel, High Noon, I Believe, Hey Joe, The Kid's Last Fight, Cool Water, Rawhide, and Lord, You Gave Me a Mountain.
Wow.
An amazing, amazing crew. But just imagine the talent to be able to say you've recorded songs in the pop, gospel, rock, folk, jazz, and blues categories.
That's really incredible. And particularly when you put it up against a lot of the singers now who can barely even do what they're in the genre.
Where's my
of.
Harmonizer?
Yeah.
I need to have my computer help me make it sound like I know how to sing.
My nephew just released an album, and he and I were talking about music today, and he was saying that a lot of the people who produce albums or, who have albums out today, they're so highly overproduced that it doesn't even really sound like their voice, and a lot of them don't even have good voices, that they're there mostly because of how they look. But to have somebody like this who can do that in so many different genres with really unproduced music, you're not changing the vocal tones that much.
No, the only way you're
really
changing it is the way you're delivering your own voice.
Yes.
It's how you're singing.
It is what is coming out of your mouth and hitting the microphone. So that is really incredible.
The other songs that are in here, and the list we've got here, I'm Tired. We're going to hear Madeline Kahn's Lily von Stupp sing that one for a bunch of cowboys for entertainment.
A classic.
Tired of playing the game. I do that a lot. I'll sing most of those lyrics at some point. Like, Mark goes, gosh, I'm tired. I'm like, I'm tired. They start with Byron and Shelley, then chomp on your bellies and bust your balloons.
Are you an entertainer? Then get your feet off my stage.
Tex ma'am.
Text, ma'am.
The French Mistake. We talked about Dom
Yes.
DeLuise earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's the song he's trying to capture on film for his big musical that he's filming on one of the sound stages. And we'll find out what The French Mistake is all about.
And we will carefully tread those waters of some of the insults.
Well,
that
I
he
can only
throws
tell you
around.
what it means. It's up to you to decide with it what to do with it afterwards.
That's true.
And we've got the Ballad of Rock Ridge. That'll be coming up here as they sack the town of Rock Ridge.
That's
and
right.
it leads us into church.
That's right. Who's behind that one?
All of them. Music and lyrics, Mel Brooks.
Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
The Ballad of Rock Ridge is great. The whole telling, it's sort of it's not a montage per se, but it kind of is.
Yeah, it sort of is.
And yet the
Yeah.
song never stops until the end, and you realize it's like that's what they've been singing in church the whole time.
Right.
And that's what I love about it. The transition from the battle in town, from Anal Johnson spitting in his glass to the guy in the little shower booth who gets the booth taken and he's covered in suds.
Yeah.
The guy, that's the end of this suit, being dragged behind the horse.
Well, and it's kind of a cool vehicle to be able to introduce you to all the players.
Yeah. It lets you know how the action's right off the bat.
Yep.
We understand that this town is being bullied to try to get out of there. And yet at the very end, it changes from this sort of almost cacophonous, all this action's going on, and to a church hymn. And It almost sounds like something you would sing in church.
It'd be a weird church, but yes.
Well, have you seen Reverend Johnson?
That's true. And the people who shoot his Bible out of his hand.
I mean, the whole town is full of Johnsons. How many Johnsons do I got surrounding me? And by the way, if you haven't figured that joke out by the time we get to the end of this movie, I don't know what to tell you with.
No,
I can't help you.
Probably listening to the wrong podcast.
Next credit we get, music composed and conducted by John Morris, who at the time of this recording, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of his death in January of 2018.
Yes, and it's a sad loss, but what a career. I mean,
What an
just
amazing career. Just from the big musicals to all the way through soundtracks. And I mean, I think he went all the way through to the Patrick Swayze perennial favorite, Nobody Leaves Baby in the Corner.
That's right. I thought you were going to say Roadhouse. I was trying to figure
Not
out
Roadhouse.
which of his songs he wrote for Roadhouse.
He didn't do Roadhouse.
Did he do the Saturday Night Live where
Dirty Dancing.
he was doing the Dirty Dancing thing?
He did. I remember you were upset when you found that out last season. You're like, well, we can't all have hits. I'm like, you know what? For a lot of people, that was a great movie. And to be able to do, once again, like, Joseph Barak, to be able to do all the genres behind camera, let's face it, whether you liked the movie or not, to have the talent to be able to do everything from old-fashioned, big score, big budget musicals to go to Dirty Dancing. And then in between, you've got small pictures like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. I mean, come on. That's a talented guy.
That is talent. That is talent. Yeah, I have to make the sarcastic
I know I got to pull it out of
comment
you, but
yeah, it's more talent than I
it
have.
just smells funny. Put it back.
Yeah.
I don't know where you were storing that.
Exactly.
Where was this rag?
Huh. That's odd.
I keep trying to wipe the counter, but it keeps smearing. Once again, back to Anal Johnson and his.
There you go.
He always liked to
Cleaning
keep
out
things
the
nice and
mug.
clean. That would always crack me up as a kid. Right on cue, you go. Like he's spitting in the glass to clean it. It's awesome.
Yeah. And nobody even bats an eye. Everybody just keeps on drinking.
That's why everybody's got to drink whiskey, because you hope it kills whatever was in the glass before you drink it.
Absolutely.
It's like the antiseptic.
It is.
Next credit we get, which is really, really important, we get the writing credits, the screenplay credit, as well as the original story. We got to give a shout out first to Andrew Bergman. He actually came up with the idea before there was ever a final script. He actually had written the first draft of the screenplay. And he said, basically, in interviews, he loved what was happening in Harlem, 1974. He loved the rise of black artistry, on the backside of the whole civil rights movement, to see black actors, black performers, black music. And so he said, I want to tell a story that helps to highlight how important it is to embrace that. But I want to do it in a way that's kind of catches you off guard. And he said, it just came to me. I'm going to take the 1974 movement and I'm going to put it in 1874 in the Old West. And how would a town react to a black sheriff, an authority figure, somebody you're supposed to respect, somebody who is a representative of law and order, and put them in the Old West and see what happens with a town that's all white.
It's an interesting study. And you talk about a guy with a crazy career. He's actually still living, but he's retired. Among his credits are Striptease, Honeymoon in Vegas, Soap Dish, The Freshman.
By the way, Soap Dish is fantastic, especially if you ever were at one point in your time either addicted to soap operas or at least were aware of soap opera acting and the telling of soap opera tales.
Yes.
Soap Dish. There's a comedy that's
very underrated.
Underrated.
Yeah, absolutely. This one is a small one that you may have heard of, Fletch.
Oh, that's a small movie that
yeah.
One of the few movies I really do like with Chevy Chase.
Yeah. Oh, you're not a big Chevy Chase
I'm not
fan?
a huge Chevy Chase fan. I understand, as we learned from Christmas Vacation, he can be a very difficult person behind the scenes. I love Fletch. I wish he had done more characters or more movies in that vein. I wish there had been more Fletch movies. I know Fletch 2, for some reason, never was as well received as the first Fletch. I didn't mind it. I knew it wasn't as strong, but I still think they could have made more movies. For some reason, nobody wanted to work with Chevy Chase.
That is a big possibility.
So,
yeah. In fact, I heard the other day there's a book that's going to come out probably this year that deals with his time on the show Community. That is not going to be
flattering.
Not going to be flattering.
Ugh.
So, interestingly, Mr. Bergman has one upcoming credit or one upcoming project that is untitled. It's just at this point registered as a film by Alan Stewart Eisner, where he will be the director. So he's coming out of retirement to direct this movie. So it must be something important that he felt like he needed to be involved with.
Well, Bergman came up with the idea. It got into the hands of a Hollywood producer who ran into Mel Brooks, who needed something. He was like going, gosh, I haven't been able to get a hit yet. I mean, they haven't been disasters, but they haven't been.
Yeah, hadn't been great.
Let's put it this way: there wasn't a line of offers outside his door. And thanks to Andrew Bergman's script, Mel Brooks said, well, I don't do anything unless I write the script. I need to write it. I mean, I'm not going to take somebody else's stuff. And I remember the guy said, well, I think I can get you right off the bat $100,000. He goes, I'm more than happy to do this picture. Right. But he did want to go ahead and pull in some other writers. And we have sort of mentioned this as we went, but we need to give all credit to all 5 of these names. Mel Brooks is obviously the lead here with being the director behind it. But Norman Steinberg, here's his story. Norman Steinberg used to bump into Mel Brooks at the Chock full of Nuts delicatessen when they used to sell sandwiches as well as coffee. As the joke Mel Brooks used to say, back when they actually had food besides the coffee. But he said, I would get this guy who would always be come by my table and say, I want to write for you. I want to write comedy for you. I'm a lawyer, but I hate being a lawyer. I want to be a comedy writer. That's what I am at heart. And he said, and he kept bugging him, and he kept bugging him, and he kept bugging him. And he said, finally, I was just trying to get him to go away. I said, look, I helped create this show, Get Smart. I know the producers behind it. If I can put you guys in touch with each other, have you write a script, I'll wait to see what he says about your writing. Apparently, did a good job.
Did okay, yeah.
Because next thing you know, the guy comes back from the Get Smart show and says, guy's pretty good. So he goes over to Norman Steinberg and says, hey, okay, I'm going to have you come in and help me work on the script for this picture I'm working on. And he goes, and that's when Norman kind of hit me with a double whammy. He goes, oh, but you got to bring my writing partner with me. His name's Alan Uger, and he's a dentist.
Seems about right.
But apparently, again, a guy who was in one career but had a love of writing and just couldn't figure out how to get his foot in the door. So they brought Alan Uger in, and the last name we talked about already, Mel Brooks already knew from the very beginning once he realized that this was a story about Black power, Black empowerment, about anti-racism. He said, I needed to have somebody who could help me make sure we were staying true to that character and that culture. And he reached out to Richard Pryor, who gets one of the writing credits.
Makes sense. And, as we'll say many times through this one, it was the perfect choice. So, but it is interesting that Brooks, twice now on movies that we've covered, had said, no, I only do my original stuff. And he wasn't the primary first writer on this. He wasn't the primary first writer on Young Frankenstein. And those are arguably his two best movies.
Ironically, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a reflection of him as a writer. I think it's just
No.
happenstance and a lot of things that came together. But it is kind of funny that both times he said, no, I have to be the writer. I have to be the writer. And in Young Frankenstein, he kept getting reined in by Gene and other people. But still, his two biggest films and two most memorable films probably are ones that he wasn't the primary writer on.
I've got a quote here from Mel Brooks, by the way, describing the writing process. He said, Brooks described the writing as chaotic, saying, quote, Blazing Saddles was more or less written in the middle of a drunken fist fight.
I can see that.
He said there were 5 of us all yelling loudly for our ideas to be put in the movie. Not only was I the loudest, but luckily I also had the right as director to decide what was in or out.
That seems about right.
True Mel Brooks.
That seems about right.
But there you go. Bergman remembers the room being just as chaotic. He actually has a quote in the magazine Creative Screenwriting saying, in the beginning, we had 5 people. One guy left after a couple of weeks. Then it was basically me, Mel, Richie Pryor, and Norman Steinberg. Richie left after the first draft, and then Norman, Mel, and I wrote the next 3 or 4 drafts. It was a riotous room.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's great that they gave everybody, for whatever their contributions, they still all got credits in it. And as I told you, the story went with Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor hadn't gotten his last check yet for his writing. And when Mel Brooks wanted to quit the movie, Richard Pryor's like, don't do that. I haven't gotten paid.
Yeah.
He's like,
good motivation.
You quit, they're not going to give me my check.
Really good motivation.
So sometimes things just happen the way they're supposed to, like as we'll get to when we eventually come back around to the introduction of Gene Wilder's character.
Yes.
So next credit we get to in this minute number 2 that we are dealing with of Blazing Saddles. Before we get the final credit in this minute, we actually get the camera moving. And for a good 10 or 15 seconds, it's a slow pan across the prairie with some rolling mountains in the background. And eventually we start seeing that there's a line of individuals, some wagons and some individual specks, some people on horseback. I mean, this is a super, super long shot. You can barely see the line. You realize there's people working along a line, but very, very far back, that camera.
One of the things I really like about this is about 8 years ago, my sister moved to California, and me and a buddy of mine drove her car and her 2 dogs from Atlanta to L.A. And we did that route that runs through North Texas and across to L.A. from there. And we got to see the country just like this. And not long after this, unfortunately, my friend was diagnosed with cancer and then passed away. But getting to see this out a car window, it really makes you appreciate how amazingly scenic and beautiful this country is.
It's something the wife and I have got on our bucket list. We have never been to the West. I mean, we've been to the West Coast.
Yeah.
But we've never been this side of the Rockies to go see places like Arizona, New Mexico, even places like Colorado, Wyoming. So at some point, I do want to see all these places that have this sort of Western mystique, the prairies, I'd love to see the adobes. I'd love to see the Rockies from the ground. I've seen them flying over them, but I've never seen them from the ground.
I worked in Yellowstone National Park one summer when I was in college, and being, living on the East Coast, growing up on the East Coast, you see mountains, and I've hiked some of the Appalachian Trail and stuff like that. But when you walk outside and just see a towering mountain with snow on top, it's a real different view. It's really amazing. And it's very, when you see like stand in Jackson Hole and see the mountains around there and see the Grand Tetons, you realize how small you are.
Oh, yeah.
And it is an incredible feeling. So I highly recommend. And that trip across the country, too, you realize how big America is.
America. All right. The last credit we get to as we wrap up this minute number 2 is the producer of this film, Michael Hertzberg. Only 7 total production credits in his career, but check the ones out that he worked on. A Mel Brooks flick, The 12 Chairs.
Right.
Sort of a parody of The Apostles.
Right.
Then he did Blazing Saddles as his second film. Then he went on to Mel Brooks' Silent Movie. Then a different character, a different fun comedy movie. He went on to Johnny Dangerously. And then 3 other kind of different style movies, Memories of Me, Out on a Limb, And the last flick, Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones, Entrapment.
That's an interesting collection of movies. That Entrapment, I remember seeing it. I don't remember thinking too much of it.
Came out in 1999, the last producer credit he has. An insurance agent is sent by her employer to track down and help capture an art thief. It just happens to be Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about that. I was kind of one of those, I saw it and I just never really
remember
thought
until
much
she
about it.
got married to, she married
Her husband,
Yeah.
Mr.
Michael
Zeta-Jones. Douglas.
Yeah. Before she got married to Michael Douglas, I mean, that was the up-and-coming actress to keep an eye on, Catherine Zeta-Jones. From the first Zorro movie, I mean, bam. And then all of a sudden she gets married and
that's it.
Maybe one or two movies after that, and then had kids, and what has she done?
Nothing.
I mean, maybe someone's yelling at us right now through their radio or screen or whatever, saying, "Don't you know that?"
Yeah, she did.
I don't. I can tell you, my daughter Elena, we changed her name. It was going to be Alexis Caroline until we saw the movie Zorro, and her character in the Zorro was Elena. It was a name we hadn't thought of before. We loved the sound of Elena so much, and the Spanish spelling Elena, that we immediately changed at that point from the first Zorro movie. We can thank Catherine Zeta-Jones for the naming of one of our daughters.
There you go. That may be the most auspicious thing she's done in a while.
I liked the Zorro movies. I did too. The first one especially was really, really well done. I didn't mind the second one. It started to get a little too big for what it was trying to do, but I liked it a lot. The first one was really, really fun. I thought Antonio Banderas brought that mix of both swagger and comedy. You had, of course, Catherine Zeta-Jones just hot as all get out. I mean, just smoking. And you had Anthony Hopkins as the swordsman, the trainer, the elder figure, the Yoda, if you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just it's such a good combination of talent, and it was a fun movie. If you've never seen the Antonio Banderas Legend of Zorro in 2005. I think the Mask of Zorro came first, 1998, and then the Legend of Zorro in 2005. And, they were both enjoyable flicks.
They were, and unfortunately, just not a series that went any further than that. But I always liked Zorro, and I thought they did a great job portraying it.
Actually, it's one of the first heroes I remember seeing little shorts in the theater when they would show shorts before the majors.
Right.
I saw several Zorro black and white shorts. And thinking, a lot of the Raiders of the Lost Ark type chase sequences, you can go back and find old Zorro serials where Zorro was doing some of the same stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and there was a very short-lived Zorro TV show at one point that was actually pretty good. I don't even know if it made it a season.
Was it a Disney-produced thing, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
I wonder if that's I remember watching something on TV, catching it in reruns.
Yeah, like I said, it was not on long. Well, from 57 to 59, and then there was another one from 90 to 93.
I have no idea what the 90 to 93. I'm definitely thinking the black and white one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't remember the 90 to 93.
Now, you remember George Hamilton's movie version in 1981?
Yes.
Zorro, the Gay Blade?
Yes, that was that was interesting.
Everyone was talking about that for some reason in 1981. Like, oh, you got to go see George Hamilton playing Zorro. And it was called Zorro, the Gay Blade.
In 1963, there was also Zorro and the Three Musketeers.
Oh, that's a nice a crossover.
Yeah.
Zorro and the Three Musketeers. That's wild.
Yep. One movie, 1963. So, so that was a good Wilder Ride rabbit trail, as usual.
There we go. Hey, we're back.
Trying to think of how we got off on that tangent, but that was good.
Yep, we're back. We're back, and we're done with the minute. That's the last credit we get is producer Michael Hertzberg on the screen, and then we go to, it just cuts off right there in the middle of the wrap-up of the Blazing Saddles theme being sung. Camera still doing a little bit of a pan across that long line of people working somewhere far off in the background.
Somewhere out west.
Somewhere in the west. Let's go. Let's wrap this up then. Let's because we got to get into minute 3 coming your way tomorrow for Hump Day. It'll be the last day. It's just the two of us. We'll eventually have Jim O'Kane joining us here on Thursday. So before we can wrap this up, let's tell people a little bit about where they can go to listen or learn more about us.
Well, our website is probably the best place for all things The Wilder Ride. It is thewilderride.com. And on there, it'll have some bios of us, some bios of our guests. If you're interested in who's coming on here in the near future and who's been with us before, you'll find all that information, some bio information, and what episodes those folks were on and will be on. Also, it gives you a little bit about our Patreon page, and it'll take you to our Facebook page and help you catch up on all our past episodes. So, again, that's thewilderride.com.
And I would really encourage you, if you've liked what you're hearing, you like the episode, you like the concept, the tone, whatever, take a second and go to your podcatcher of choice and leave us a quick review. We'd prefer the 5-star kind, but more importantly, we prefer the comment, because that does add more weight to your rating, and that will help other people maybe accidentally stumble across or find this podcast. So we would really appreciate that.
And I looked earlier this week, we have 30 people who have made comments, and that really, I can't tell you how much we appreciate that.
With that said, come back tomorrow, Wednesday. We're going to continue on the screen. We're going to have the big director credit directed by Mel Brooks. And we're going to end with some of the first dialogue of the movie. We get Lyle, one of the right-hand mans to Taggart, saying, napping on the job. Now, who would be napping out there when it's 120 degrees? It can't be more than 114.
Lazy people.
You just dock that person a day's pay.
Absolutely.
You can't do the job. You're not getting the paycheck. I mean, come on.
Napping on the job.
Napping on the job.
That could really be our tagline for this podcast.
Could very well be. So come on back tomorrow for minute number 3 of Blazing Saddles on this, The Wilder Ride.
So, chess or what?
Screw.
Let's play chess.
Sure. You can close the blinds.
No, we're playing chess.
Okay, we can call it that. If that'll make you feel better. You sleep at night.
Yeah, well, I don't sleep well anyway.
Why are you crying? I lost at chess. Takes on a whole new meaning.
Indeed it does.
Sorry about that. Dear Lord. I turned your mic off and I still felt it.
That was on the Richter scale, I'm afraid.
My God. Are you okay?
Yeah, that's hay fever starting.
Do we need to call somebody?
Maybe a repair person for the front windows.
There's a crack.